Started. Okay, hi everybody. I'm Sammy from Square Books. I'm the most excited person in the world to be here today because we have Roshani Chokshi and Shannon Chakraborty, and they're two of my favorite fantasy authors ever. This is just like the best. So they're here. I'm going to give y'all a couple of announcements about upcoming events that you may be interested in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. First off, this Saturday, we have our meeting of our Crossroads book group, which is our book group that talks about racial injustice. And so we are reading The Only Black Girls in Town by Brandy Colbert. And I heard a sneaking suspicion that she might have sent us a video to watch at that event. So that's on Saturday, and that's going to be really cool. We are hosting a launch for Mara Fitzgerald's new book, Beyond the Ruby Veil. It's her debut. It's going to be on October 13th, and Nina Varela, who wrote Crier's War, is going to be in conversation with her, and you can get signed and personalized copies from us. Mara has promised to doodle in the margins. Mostly a lot of Shrek drawings is what people have been asking for, but I'm sure you can ask for something else if that's what you want. And then on October 27th, Ashley Poston and Caitlin Sage Patterson will be here to promote Ashley's new book, Among the Beast and Briars. If you want to attend any of these books, just email rsvp@squarebooks.com to register like you did for this event. Okay, letting another person in, getting a nice crowd. So we are going to go ahead and get started. First, Roshani, Shannon, thank you for being here. Yay, yay, yay. Do y'all want to give me just a basic elevator pitch for your series so we can let the people know what's up?
Go for Shannon.
Oh my God, 2 months. The book just came out. It's fantastic. You should definitely talk about it.
No, I'm first. Nose goes. You do it.
Okay. I wrote the Daevabad trilogy. No, okay. My book is a con artist from Egypt. What did I say 3 years ago? Gets more than she bargained for when she accidentally conjures an ancient Jinn warrior who steals her way to a city of magic that is then thus a city of magic on the brink of civil war and then actual civil war. And it's about family and magic and politics and deep-rooted generational trauma and burning down the world you knew to build a new one and fun.
That was so good.
Dang it! I wish I should have gone first. But Sammy, this is your fault. Why did you go first? I had to go after that. Dang it.
They're both going to be good.
I'm going to be honest, all right? The Gilded Wolves started off as like National Treasure with more attractive people. Shout out to you, Nicolas Cage. You're the muse I didn't ask for. That's literally the dedication in the Silvered Serpents. And then the Silvered Serpents is sort of the gotcha book. You have now entered my Book of Job fan fiction, and I hope that you enjoy. So fun.
She tells herself short. Her book is an investigation about colonialism and the stealing of artifacts.
Yeah, it's got that too. It's got that too. There's so many things on my brain. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it. It is also a story of found family. It is about the magic of objects, the way that we tell history, the act of who is telling us history. And it is very much that story of just, what do you do when the worst thing has happened? And what do you do when you believe that you've been given an opportunity to change all of it? How do you seize that power, and what are the consequences? So, yeah.
Ooh, there we go. Yeah, bringing it all together.
There we go. You're like, oh, good.
No, the Nicolas Cage thing was the first thing I was going to ask, so you checked that off the list. That's very good. I mean, we needed to talk about it. Now everybody knows.
Everyone knows.
So the next thing I want to talk about is I love con artist, and your books both have heisty con artist characters, and I would love to talk about, is it Nari or Neri? Nahri. I'd like to talk about her and Severin, my beautiful, beautiful little con artist children.
Yes, they are frightening.
Yeah. So if you wanted to talk about the idea for them, or why they are the way they are and why they make me sad, that would be great.
Why they make me sad? I'll be honest, Severin makes me sad too, especially in Silvered Serpents. And I know I've been getting so many messages about how you guys want to punch him. I get it. I also want to punch him. I get it, but give him a chance. I just finished my first revision on book 3, so I hope that well, I'm not going to give it away, but I'm excited for the conclusion of his journey. I'll put it that way. But it's funny. I was talking to Holly Black actually about where we both have characters named Severin in different stories. And to me, a lot of what I imagined about Severin really came from his name, which means strict, but it's also a name that I got from the Velvet Underground song, Venus and Furs, which is a song about someone who likes being tortured. And I feel like that says more than it should about Severin. This is someone with a very, very strict idea of what it means to love someone and to protect people, and has a very skewed and kind of tortured understanding of what it means for himself to be deserving of love. And I think that informs a lot of the things that he does. I mean, this is someone who is, so he's Algerian and he's French, but he's white passing. And coming from a mixed race background, what it meant to be culturally white passing in some scenarios, and knowing that you straddle two different lines and that you're not quite enough to be enough of anything or to be accepted by the communities around you, it makes you kind of hyper observant about the way that people treat you and the way that you're trying to navigate your role in the world. And that is Severin. That's like his mindset. Womp womp.
First, I'm going to dot my I, and I'm going to apologize because I took this because I knew if I was talking to you, I was going to be laughing so hard I would cry, and then my eye makeup would run. So yeah, this is my professional eye dabbler tissue.
I thought you were going to just be like, I was so emotionally I am.
Severin makes me so sad.
I myself like, I am really smart. Look at that.
I mean, I love con artists, and I don't think we're alone in loving con artists. Con artists as a feature of fables and folktales are something that goes back eons. I mean, it's the standard idea of the trickster. I always knew I wanted to include one, but I think when I was developing the character of Nahri, I wanted to stick with that. I wanted to kind of examine the circumstances that would make someone a con artist. And she grows up on the streets in a world and a time where people would have been terrified of her if she had let on what she could do. And I think that would shape you into a type of person that you would never lose that. So that even when she goes on, her hero's journey and we hit some of our tropes of like, the orphan with a secret, and the chosen one and all that. You don't see her lose that aspect of her personality. And I think it scars her in some ways. That even at the end of the third book, she is still that person, but she's found strength in the good and positive things that has given her. And she's also is getting to a place where she can give herself the time to heal and kind of accept all of her parts, thorny and not.
Yeah. I love that what you said, the trickster as an ancient narrative too, because it does, like, what are they after? Why do they want it? And for Severin, it is like that, I'm going to try to reclaim the things that people have stolen because it's not your place to steal. And yet there are moments of lightness. I don't remember, I think I saw it on your Twitter ages ago. It was like some ancient Baghdad treatise that was talking about like the thief's guide to stealing stuff, and they recommended putting a candle on a tortoise.
Yes. So first of all, that is the Book of Charlatan. There are a couple different sources for that. And it was, yes, you would tunnel a hole in someone's house and put a candle on a tortoise, and it would go into the home. And if the people were there or awake, surely they would go, a tortoise is in my house. And then the thieves could run. If no one said that, it was for, you could go in, it would be safe. And it comes, there are different accounts of it, but it comes in this one book, the Book of Charlatans, by Al-Jawari. And there's an English translation of it coming out in November, I think, from the Library of Arabic Literature. I got to write the foreword for it, and it was the best thing I've done in my life. Child marriage, writing the foreword for this book, my trilogy. And it was just so much fun. It was a 13th century guide to being a trickster. And it was written by this man who thought so much of himself. He's like, I know 1,000 tricks, but I won't bore you. I'll just tell you 100. And it's ideas like knockout gas that would be stored, like you would make a fart sound with your arm and knock everybody out and then steal from them. How to make a fake treasure map. How to take someone to said fake treasure cave and have fire statues that would spit out on them. Like it's incredible. And this is like these things, and I'm just like, I am nothing compared to the storytellers of the past. Like,
that's nonsense. So here's the wonderful thing about what we do. And I think this is really funny because we got launched on this like topic of thieves and these poor tortoises that are like, it's not even my birthday. Where am I going? Like all these kinds of things. But just, oh my God, I totally lost my train of thought thinking about a tortoise being excited that it was his birthday. That's why it got a candle. Oh my God, I had something so intelligent I was going to say. It like totally missed. Shannon, what's the last thing you said?
I don't know.
Here, I'll jump in. Let's connect this back to like historical research.
It was something, man, it was so smart too.
It was about like storytelling.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Sammy. Wow.
That's why I'm here.
The minute we mentioned tortoises, we lost it.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say was one of my absolute favorite quotes about writing is from Philip Pullman, and he describes that all storytellers are thieves and that our sigil is an image of a raven with a jewel in between its beak. And so I just love that. I just love that idea that all that we're doing is just like taking shiny things, or in this case, a turtle, and just take them. So I don't know. Yes, we are following the long, glorious tradition of storytelling.
Established tradition, stepping into the footsteps of our greater ones.
Yeah, I'm going to say that at Indian parties now when they're just like, so you dropped out of law school and you married a doctor. Good for you. Like, well, there could have been a much more ancient profession I participated in and I did not.
Oh, burn!
So, I meant law. Next question.
Oh, y'all, it's gonna be hard. You're too funny. Both of your series have a basis in history, and I would love to hear about the research that you did, especially because I love snowy Russia. It's peak, and I want to hear about the research you did for that, and then I want to hear about the research you did into Egypt. Shannon.
Well, Shannon literally is a historian, so I'm gonna say my like answer first, which is like I started with Pinterest, and then I went there. Here's the thing for me. I think that atmosphere is that invisible, magical texture that makes a book come to life. So I'm a very, very visual storyteller, and so for me, I do have to start with images first. And I was really, just of course, I was taken with the idea of wintry Russia, but also. There were similar examples to this. I don't know if there's people in the audience that have ever listened to the Noble Blood podcast. I think it's fantastic. And there really is a reference to an ice palace and what that looked like. And then I was curious about, what was going on beyond St. Petersburg and Moscow and places like that. And in those sort of in-between areas like Siberia and Lake Baikal, which, if you're familiar with the history of Genghis Khan, like he was born not too far from there. It's a place that is steeped in a lot of spirituality and has a past of shamanism and that sort of tradition. So I was really interested in a place that seemed magical and spiritual in a different sort of way. And then like a lot of the research in general for just the Gilded Wolves trilogy came about from looking at the things that I thought were shiny and digging at them enough to see that there was some ugly bones underneath it. I'm assuming everybody here has already read The Gilded Wolves, but the most common example is a lot of people forget that the Eiffel Tower was the entrance of the 1889 World Fair, and that the Eiffel Tower was not even the main draw of it. The one exhibit that had 28 million visitors was the Human Zoo, and was called a Negro Village. And it is exactly as horrible as you think it is. And so all these monuments, these pieces, sometimes they celebrate really ugly stuff. And I love being able to write stories that can hold both things and say that one does not cancel out the other, but you have to look closely at both.
That is a beautiful statement. I am not a historian. I am a failed historian because I graduated into a recession and decided instead of doing things with my degree that made sense, I would move to New York City for love. And yeah, No, thank God. But I basically spent, like, I graduated from college, and to not die, I got the first job I could in 2008, and I was working at a medical office, which was an OBGYN office, and I have a whole bunch of other related stories from that. But I kind of felt like I had, messed up my life and my chance at, going back to school, and I kind of wanted to stay in that world. So I started working on, I used to call it fan fiction because I'm naive, and then people told me what most fan fiction is, so now I've stopped using that description. But I kind of talked about it as historical fan fiction, that I was fascinated by the medieval Islamic world, particularly the traditions of storytelling and sort of the idea of the global community and travelers and how that would have looked like, particularly, even though Daevabad is in Central Asia, I was particularly interested in sort of the Indian Ocean littoral. And I started writing this fantasy series that I would just be like, I think this is really interesting. Let me look at this, or let me look at this. And I wanted to look at the idea of the jinn and like sort of their world, like, oh, they're the creatures who live in this unseen realm, and they have their own cities and kingdoms and all sorts of different things. And I thought it would be really interesting if that was something they kind of were inspired by human civilization and bits and pieces of that. So I started working on it. It was to the point where, like, I would read a really new cool book about like a certain court system in like Zanzibar, and I would try to be like, oh, the Katanis, they should use those methods. And it just grew from that, to the point that, by the time I wrote the third book, I had all of these like very strong opinions on history, and sort of there's been a lot said about my books. People are like, oh, like they're about the Middle East, and they're not. Like, they were very much meant to be this sort of global Islamic homage to all of these communities and histories, things I couldn't fit in the book, of course. And by the time I wrote The Empire of Gold, I really wanted to show that, and I wanted to show the histories that even came before that, and just kind of the way that when we tell stories and we tell histories, we're just building on top of other debated arguments and other things, and just kind of the way that trickles down, or trickles up, I guess you could even say, about what it's like to look at your history and to interrogate it and think about what it means.
I love that.
Thank you.
Speaking of interrogating history, someone sent me a great question, and I do want to go ahead and get to it. Izzy is asking about colonialism and how it affects the plots, characters, and situations in your book. And you both tackle colonialism pretty well, if I recall correctly. Do y'all want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, I mean, well, for me, a lot of it was, how do I say it? I think there's space and there's a necessity for books that talk about your race and issues around race. But what I really, really wanted to do with the Gilded Wolves was make that colonialism a lens with which they view their world. It's not it's not the thing that they obsess over, but it is the thing, it is like another language that is side by side with how they interact with the world, if that makes any sense. Especially for the character of Enrique, who I gave a lot of my own similarities to him. He's Filipino and Spanish. I'm Filipino and Indian, and what it looks like to navigate belonging to two separate things, that question of how, where do you exactly belong? And also within the world of the Gilded Wolves and what they're doing, the objects that they acquire, there is always that language about who gets the right to own this piece of history. I mean, legally, the rule with property is that possession is 9/10 of the law. And that's something that hasn't changed a lot of the time. And yet, I was talking to my cousin who works, he's like an art historian and is working at a museum and a curator. And we had a lot of discussions about how at a certain point, we need to remove that language and consider an object as a history of all people. And kind of like what Shannon was saying, like it fits into like this global culture of like how we define ourselves, where we center ourselves in the grand narrative of time. And that when we look at it like that, it becomes a thing that's joyfully shared. So I hope that's the, I don't know, the point I'm trying to make, I think, with the Gilded Wolves in the end, that it's a story that belongs to all of us. But that effect of colonialism, how it forces the characters to always know that they're functioning from the sidelines and to always be fighting for a place in the spotlight, is something that I think is really important, because when we consider like these 19th century communities, we never consider the very real people of color that were there too and doing things and loving and breathing and like interacting with the world. And they really deserve a spotlight and a place in that conversation.
It's interesting you mentioned, sort of the grand arc of history or the narrative history, because that's something I was very interested in looking in. And I think that encompasses what we consider colonialism and even beyond that. I mean, human history is often very grim. It's a history of displacement and attack and occupation and what is built after that. And I think there are ways to read that and get very depressed. I mean, a lot of what interests me is sort of the very early, like what is considered sort of late antiquity or the pre-Islamic world or the early Islamic world. And it's interesting to look underneath that and see what was there. And that doesn't just go for that part of the world or that region, but I wanted to look at what happens after. What do you do when so many of our histories and our cities and our places, their origins are violent and their origins are displacing the original inhabitants, oppressing the original inhabitants? How do people build, futures from that? I think you can look at that everywhere. Just, what part is recognizing your own role in that and the role of your community and as an oppressor, as a supremacist, and interrogating that and kind of giving a path for people to break down their own biases and their own roles in this and take a step back and do that work. I think I'm a big believer in the idea that stories in a way are mirrors, and that sometimes you're in a place where you can't quite see how your story goes, how your story ends. And I think there is a role in fiction for that, to give you an example that is sometimes maybe a little easier to swallow because it's outside of you, outside of your country or community, and give people a mirror into examining in that. And you go, wow, that's so bad that happened in Daevabad. And you're like, really? Isn't it?
Interesting you say that. Oh my God.
I think it's interesting because I got, so many comments I got about the book. They were like, oh, this reminded me of like my youth in Northern Ireland, or this was clearly an allegory for, Palestine and Israel. This one scene, I'd be like, no, that was actually me writing about like the American occupation of Iraq. But it was interesting to me how many responses I got. They were like, this is that. And I was like, no, people are all awful. And we have a long arc of awful. But I think I wanted the book to interrogate that.
Yeah, I love that. And I also think that, it really raises the question of what is the legacy that we leave behind? I mean, lately, I don't know, I've been on a whole like huge nonfiction kick reading about conquerors. And I'd stumbled across some Guardian article that was like Genghis Khan was the most useless emperor because he didn't do anything. He left behind no monuments, no architecture with which to remember him. And I was just like, the legacy is globalization. You missed the point. And it really just depends. I mean, it all comes down to this. Who is telling the story to you? And we talk about, there's that cool line I wrote. I'm still proud of myself. A history is the myth shaped by the tongues of conquerors. I want you to know that I came up with that in a minute. And then after that, I couldn't write for a month. I feel like all of my brain juice compressed into one good line. And then I had used it up. But point being, I love that question of legacy and interrogation. And it's something that I really hope inspires the people who read our books to go beyond what we say and to be inspired and hopefully remember that your voice is so powerful and you deserve to add a line to the long narrative of history. There's no reason why you shouldn't.
I love y'all's answers so much. I feel a little emotional. So next I want to talk about your very non-traditional heroines in non-traditional fantasy spaces. Nari is a healer, but she's also magical. She's also the chosen one. She's also a con artist. Layla plays about 1,000 different roles, and and I love Sophia. She's a mess. Can you talk about the heroines that you've created? Because I love them all so much.
Shannon, you first.
Okay, I guess I'm due. Well, it's interesting. I always wanted to write Nahari as a healer. The book itself as a project that wasn't just short stories, but was something with a central narrative, leapt off the page when I started writing her. I was working in medicine. My husband was, training to be a doctor, and it was always something. I think the profession of healing is fascinating, but I wanted to show that in its mess. That I wanted to show, her training was going to be hard. She was going to screw up and kill people. And it would be, your patients aren't always like, very, like you watch like, ER or something, and it's like, everybody's very easy. And you like, I should do this. This person is a grandmother. And it'd be like, what if that grandmother is kind of an asshole? Like that. I have so many stories. Like, I can't even tell you, like medicine is such a story of human mess. And I wanted to kind of to get in what I could about that and just how hard it would be. And, gaining the confidence to do the things she does, and gaining even, sort of the burnt out edge of being able to move on, of seeing terrible things, of being the person who handles other people's worst days of their lives and being okay with that and moving on, and the kind of person who could survive that. And in terms of just her as a character, I really just wanted to write a woman who felt real, someone who had ambitions and had, her own failures of confidence and was a mess. I wanted to write somebody who could fall in and out of love and have different relationships, and at the end of the day want something more than that, and be okay with that, and see how that would just be a part of her life. That I very much, I joke that like I hate true love. Not true love, one true love. And stop laughing, you are distracting me.
No, I'm laughing. Never mind. I'm gonna do it later. I'll tell you.
Okay. But I wanted to just, she could be young and sort of lustful. She could also try to negotiate a political marriage that, this would just be part of her life. And she could have those, we, in fantasy, like I write adult epic fantasy, and so many times it's like you have the male character who is allowed to have 12 different love interests, and is like, the first time he does anything, he's like impresses like a sex goddess, because of course.
Gilgamesh?
No, I'm not naming any titles. But I wanted to write a female character because I have that. It's always like, no, I'm sorry, you just get one. And life isn't like that. And I think when I was writing and getting inspired by the histories, like I was shocked by the period to see how many times people divorce. This one woman had divorced like 5 different times. There was another lady, again, this is all medieval Cairo, who was begged by the Grand Mufti of Mecca himself to take back her husband and didn't. Like I was amazed by that. It was very much like they were negotiating these relationships as alliances and useful things. And when they weren't useful, like husband was like, okay, maybe if I need one. And I just kind of wanted to bring in that element a bit and just show that, it's one part of your life. It doesn't have to be, sort of the all-encompassing thing.
I love that. That's like all the marriages of ancient Rome. That was just like, Scipio Africanus loves you. Never mind, he doesn't. But you died in childbirth. On to the next. Like all this kind of terribleness. But I really love what you're saying, because I really firmly agree that one thing that we need more in literature, like, is just this understanding that sex is not the seal of soulmates, and we cannot demonize women as they figure out their expression. I actually learned, like, as I was like writing the Gilded Wolves, and in particular the third book, that even the sexuality of characters as I thought they would be had changed by the end of the story. And I was so happy to realize that, and to like just be like, we don't always get something right off the bat, and there's no time, there's no expiration date for when you can discover something about yourself. But for Layla and Zofia, I loved writing their characters. I thought that with Layla especially, I was thinking about that great line when Molly Weasley is like pointing her wand at Bellatrix and says, "Not my daughter, you bitch." That is Layla's personality. That's really just her. That's her. She's a very fiercely loving, extremely protective. She's totally the mother hen. If she had a ginormous purse, it would be filled with everybody's favorite snacks. And also I don't know, something just conniving at the same time, because she doesn't, no matter how much she loves people, she doesn't put her own wants on the back burner. And I really love that strength about her. And for Zofia, she was such a fun character for me to write. It was the first time that I've tried to write a neurodivergent character. I was lucky to work with a lot of sensitivity readers who identify as being on the spectrum with Asperger's. And it was wonderful to write someone who processed the world differently. And always, I hope I did my best to be clear that it was never at a disadvantage. It was just a different sort of lens. So it was immensely rewarding to write both of them.
Yay, I love my girls. They're all so good. So my final question for y'all is, Shannon's just finished a trilogy. Roshni sent a trilogy into edits, and I'm not upset. What are y'all working on right now?
Ooh, Shannon.
I am working on two different things. My next series is me going truly back to historical fiction, and I'm writing about pirates in the medieval Indian Ocean against crusaders, because why not? It's about old retired pirates, because I felt, not old, but like I wanted to write about a mother. I wanted to write about mother's guilt and how that would work if it was the 13th century and you were a criminal instead of, I don't know, a writer.
Mention the ex-husband.
I just wanted to write about like messy women and characters who are thieves and smugglers and human. I wanted to write about something where the scope maybe wasn't about like the fate of the gin world. I wanted it to be fun. So it's like, I think I pitched it as like Ocean's 11 meets Pirates of the Caribbean. And it's
God, you cannot do that to me.
I can. That's not all I'm working on right now. I got to share this week. This was fun. That I'm writing some sort of Daevabad shorts. Last spring, instead of doing things that were productive during quarantine, I wrote just a bunch of like fan fiction for the Daevabad trilogy, because that's what was getting me through. And I posted the scenes on my website, and a lot of people liked them. And I guess enough people liked them that we're gonna put them out like in a more official capacity. And I'm writing a couple new ones, which is very hard for me, because sinking into my old world after attempting a new one is just like, what if I lived here forever? And I wrote like 30 scenes instead of an extra 4 or 5. But it's a lot of fun, and I can't say anything about what I'm writing on them here because it might be spoilery, but it's enjoyable, and there's a lot of fluff and romance and not plot.
You can tell. I was like, I'm really, really happy. Oh gosh, what am I working on? I'm just gonna say it because I'm sure someone will ask or not, and I didn't mean to curse your Thursday, but here we go. My agent probably doesn't want me to write a Santa Claus origin story, but I've talked about it so many times that I feel that
I was gonna ask. I'm honest. I've asked you every time I've seen you in person, and I was gonna ask again.
Just like, are you okay? Okay, here's what happened. It was last Christmas. No, I was like stuck doing dishes with my siblings. And then for whatever reason, we're a very odd bunch. I love them very much. We were talking about Santa Claus, and I was just like, no, it just seems like kind of messed up. He's alone in the North Pole with this like red coat. And then I'm like scrubbing a pan, like, I wonder if it was a coat of penance. I wonder what he looked like when he was young. Maybe he looked like Henry Cavill. Where does Mrs. Claus function in all of this? Is she the anchor to his exile? So that's that. I'm also working on what's going to be hopefully my first adult book. Obviously the Santa Claus story is adult, but I'm not like officially working on that yet. I'm just noodling it and terrorizing my loved ones with the idea. And it's been fun. Like the adult story is sort of, I don't know how to, it feels, it's not a fantasy, but it has fairy tale elements and it has thrillery elements. And I sent it to my agent and she said it gave her secret history vibes, but with a married couple. So I don't know. I hope that that's a thing.
That's very exciting. And because everyone really needs to know, there's an fourth Aru Shah book coming out soon. Am I correct?
Yes, that comes out April 7th. I just finished. I just got my copy edits for it, but it is done. I'm so excited about it. And then there's one book left in the Arusha series. And then that's it. That's the end of my.
No.
I know.
Give her time. She's got to write sexy, brooding Santa Claus.
We do gotta make her be Santa Claus. Sorry, kids.
It's gonna be like
kids have had their moment. It's just all these.
I'm fully envisioning warrior reindeer. Just like they should have armor. You can credit me for that if you just continue saying.
Like his house at the North Pole just got like a major update.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all mood lighting and scents and jewel bedazzled cushions, and it smells like sugar.
Obviously, it has to. One thing, well, before like the apocalypse like took hold of us, but there's this place. Is it like in Lapland? I'll ask. I think my husband's taking a nap. I don't know what he's doing. He's a resident. He's always asleep. As Shannon.
Lapland, wake up!
Yeah, you have a surgical husband. You know how it is. It's like 1 hour of consciousness a day where I like have my face on. I'm like, remember. So, but there was like this whole thing where you can stay like in an ice hotel, and it's super fancy and it's super nice, and there's all this stuff, and then you can go look at the northern lights and like sip gin from like another block of ice, which sounds like some terrible thing from a frat party, but apparently it's not.
I'm in.
It sounds very, very cold.
I know, but like it sounds really pretty too, and then importantly, tax write-off. I'll be like, why was this a tax write-off? My accountant will say, I'm like, well, let me tell you about my Santa Claus origin story, Edgar. His name really is Edgar. He's such a sweet man. Anyway.
So I've got a great audience question here. What is your favorite historical fun fact?
Ooh.
God, there's too many.
The tortoise one is not my favorite, and I will be bringing that out at parties when we're allowed to have parties again.
Oh gosh. Oh, it's not really a fun fact. But it was just something that I liked. It's that I'm obsessed with Cleopatra and stuff, but the only thing that we have that is potentially written in her hand is just a little bit of a scrawl on the edge of a tax document. And it's in ancient Greek, and the word is ginnisthoi. And what it means is let it be done. And I don't know why, but I really like that this woman who has had such a rich afterlife in our imagination, despite knowing only truly scraps about her life, or always positioning her as just some beautiful femme fatale creature that satellites more powerful men. I just really like that. That's like the only word that we have left by her.
That's amazing. I love that.
Everything in my head right now is either inappropriate or like will devastate people who enjoy like, oh, they're like, oh, I thought that was real.
Oh no.
I can't, there's too many. I just told you about a book that like instructs you how to make fake treasure maps and have fire.
I have to look up, I mean, when
I think
the book is republished, I'm going to buy it. You sold me.
Yes, everybody should buy it.
Tell us
I will use the example that you said. I'm trying to use it in my next book. Is one of the anecdotes in that is about a monkey that was apparently trained to go to the mosque on Fridays and properly wash up and properly greet it and give his prayers. And like he would ride a horse. He was all dressed up. He had slaves. And they would do this, and the story was that they told the people who had gathered to watch that he was a transfigured Indian prince who had been hexed by his awful wife, and they needed money, you see, because they were raising a ransom from his wife to into a person. And the author of the book gives this as a story that happened, and I read this, and I was just like, I'm done. I can't top that. And like there are so many jokes. I'm going to keep them. If you are like a Muslim watcher and you would like to know many of the things I thought about this, about reading about, like, you know, the monkey was allowed to go through the main entrance, really?
What I love about that is like that's like the original this Nigerian prince like spam thing that you would get.
The monkey prince.
When I was like 12 and got that, I started crying. I was like, he's stranded and he needs me.
these people.
I would have totally given money to these people. People think that I'm a Slytherin. I'm not. I'm truly a Hufflepuff. I'm too trusting. I just have like this like Slytherin exterior, but it's really just a creamy, nougaty Hufflepuff too trusting center.
Okay, we have time for one more audience question, and I like this one. Nikita wants to know if you could spend one day pre-COVID, LOL, with any of your characters, who would it be and what would you do?
Ooh. Oh.
I can tell y'all what I would do with your characters is that I would read in the library with Ali, and I would watch Layla bake, not actually bake, just enjoy the baking.
I'm actually going to throw it back to my very first book, The Star-Touched Queen, which has my first autobiographical character, which is a demon horse named Kamala.
Yes,
and I would really, really enjoy just like haunting things with her for just a whole day. Just showing up and saying like random doomsday mundane things to people and then running off. That would be fun.
I feel like I would hang out with Nahri. I'm not cool enough to. Like I would just like to watch from a distance and like absorb some of like that confidence and like know-how of people.
Those are good answers.
Know-how of people. That's how I ended this conversation.
Okay, we're about at time. Thank y'all so much. This has just been the most fun. I do want to remind everyone you can get signed book plates and copies of the Silvered Serpents at squarebooks.com. I've posted the link in the chat. Also, for those of you who came into the event late, we did record the whole thing. It is going to be on our YouTube channel tomorrow. And if you RSVP to this event, I am going to email it to you directly. So there's no need for worry. Thank y'all so much. This has been the most fun.
This is the best. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Shannon, for joining.
Thank you.
Okay. Yay. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.